All right, good evening, everyone. As you know, Swami Yogadmananda Ji is in India, and in his absence, he's asked a few of us to speak. Friday classes being usually on Srimad Bhagavatam and themes of devotion, today's topic is For the Love of God. We will start with a chant by Paramahamsa Yogananda. It's a beautiful and well-known chant from his cosmic chants. It's titled Door of My Heart, and you're all welcome to sing along. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Wilt thou come, just for once come to me? Wilt thou come, just for once come to me? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my Lord? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my Lord? Night and day, I look for thee, night and day. Night and day, I look for thee, night and day. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Wilt thou come, just for once come to me? Wilt thou come, just for once come to me? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my Lord? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my Lord? Night and day, I look for thee, night and day. Night and day, I look for thee, night and day. Night and day, now I find you, night and day. I don't think actually that the last line is part of the original song, but I found it in a music video on YouTube and I really liked it because it gives hope that there's actually some finding to all these seekings, so I decided to include it here. In the Bible, Jesus was asked, "Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law?" To this he responded, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment." In the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna says, God can be tamed only through love. What does he want? He wants from his devotees love, devotion, feeling, discrimination, and renunciation. And elsewhere in the Gospel, Sri Ramakrishna again says, "I prayed to the Divine Mother for pure love only, a love that seeks no return." Again and again in the Gospel, Sri Ramakrishna teaches us to love God with our whole being. Loving God is a necessity for God realization. It's both the end goal and the means for attaining that goal. In this discussion this evening, we will seek to unpack what is the love of God. What is the nature of this love? How does one practice it? And who is this God who is to be loved? On a personal level, when Swami Yogadmananda Ji asked me to choose a topic, I suggested this one because it's one that I have been struggling with. For one, love seems to be something organic, independent of one's will. I love the people that I love in my life spontaneously and organically. I didn't make myself love them, and could not, in fact, make myself love anyone by a simple act of will or by effort. The command of Jesus seems to imply an act of will, of self-exertion. Love. It's a command, after all. While I can tell to myself, or someone could tell me imperatively, eat, or go to the train station, or give a talk, and I can do that by an act of will, whether I like it or not. Love does not work that way, at least for me. But still, until the love of God becomes an experience, a realization, it's a practice, something that one has to strive to do. To unpack the notion of the love of God, this evening we will address the three questions that I've just enumerated in the following order. Who is this God who is to be loved? What's the nature of the love of God? And how does one practice the love of God? So first, who is this God who is to be loved? Different responses are possible to this question, depending on the spiritual tradition one belongs to, one's temperament, the account of the specific experience of God that the realized master or saint has given. But beyond these, we are told, the whole truth of who or what God is ultimately inexpressible and possibly even unrealizable by a single person. In one of his letters, Swami Turiyananda, one of the monastic disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, writes in this regard, I'm quoting, "The ultimate truth is one and non-dual. It is called by various names, Brahman, Paramatman, Bhagavan, Lord God, and so on. Whoever has realized that truth has tried to express it according to his own temperament and understanding by giving it a particular name. But nobody has been able to express the whole truth. What he is, he is. That is the final conclusion of those who have realized him." Along similar lines, Swami Tapasyananda writes, "No seer can claim to have given an exhaustive exposition of Brahman. A world of meaning is embodied in a short, pithy saying of Sri Ramakrishna. The Supreme Brahman is like a mountain of sugar. Even the greatest of teachers, like Sukadeva, are only like big ants carrying a big grain of it." Conceptually, at least, all of this makes a lot of sense to me. The infinitude of God implies and necessitates that the totality of who and what God is will be inexpressible and even unknowable. It also makes sense to me that what the Christians call God and the Hindus Brahman or Bhagavan, and the Muslims call Allah, and so on, is one and the same, or perhaps aspects of one and the same being or supreme truth. What Swami Tapasyananda called the equal validity of the different frames of reference through which the supreme truth is apprehended, though he says without accepting the exclusive claims of any. So this equal validity is one of the things that drew me to Sri Ramakrishna in the first place. Swami Tapasyananda calls it the genius of Sri Ramakrishna's philosophy. Again, all this makes a lot of sense to me, but personally, at least at the current level that I'm at, the baby level of spiritual evolution, as Swami Yogatmananda says, or what Swami Vivekananda calls the infant mind tottering in its Godward way. So at this level that I'm at, I need something more tangible, more relatable, more appealing than what I've just shared to be able to motivate myself to try to cultivate the love of God. So The answer to the question, who is this God who is to be loved, that I will share with you this evening, is what is the most appealing to me at this moment, and it will be necessarily incomplete, although I'll be drawing from people who know what they're talking about. So, here's the first answer. God is the most beautiful. God is beauty itself. Swami Vivekananda writes in Bhakti Yoga, I cannot tell anything about thee, except that thou art my love. Thou art beautiful. Thou art beauty itself. All of us, I think, have a conception of beauty and have had experiences of beauty, whether encountered in a work of art or in nature or in another human being. Beauty elevates and enchants the soul. Swami Vivekananda notes, what is, after all, required of us in this yoga, Bhakti Yoga, is that our thirst after the beautiful should be directed to God. What is the beauty in the human face, in the sky, the stars, and in the moon? It is only the partial apprehension of the real, all-embracing, divine beauty. Saint Mirabai, in her poems, writes, it is your beauty that makes me drunk. Elsewhere, when I see his beauty, here she's referring to Lord Krishna, I only crave him more. And in another poem, Mira says, her Lord's beauty cannot be measured. Swami Vivekananda again, all loves and all passions of the human heart must go to God. He's the beloved. Whom else can this heart love? He's the most beautiful, the most sublime. His beauty itself, sublimity itself. Who in this universe is more beautiful than he? Who in this universe is more fit to become the husband than he? Who in this universe is fitter to be loved than he? So let him be the husband. Let him be the beloved. This ideal of God the husband, God the beloved, is the one that Mirabai embraced towards her beloved Lord Krishna. And here we're referring to God as he, but we know that God is he and she, and of course beyond all genders. But Vivekananda cautions, often it so happens that divine lovers who sing of this divine love accept the language of human love in all its aspects as adequate to describe it. And of course, if you read Mirabai's poems, you will see that. Fools do not understand this. They never will. They look at it only with the physical eye. They do not understand the mad throes of this spiritual love. How can they? The love of God is of a spiritual nature. And this is getting to our second question. What is the nature of the love of God? The body has to be transcended in order to realize it, in order to experience this beauty of beauties. So Mirabai writes, when you offer the Great One your love, at the first step, your body is crushed. Now, to return to the question, who is this God to be loved? We have seen that this God is the most beautiful, the most sublime. And now we're going to explore a second answer to this question, and that is, this is just a recap from Swami Vivekananda, which I'm not going to read because we've discussed this. Second answer is, God is eternal, always there, caring and taking care. Mirabai says, in all my lives you have been with me, whether day or night, I remember. Our experience in this world is riddled with loss. Any human love and connection is bound to come to an end. Even the vow of connection in marriage, in an ideal situation, is only until death does us apart. Nothing can withstand time, death, except for God, who is, has ever been, and will forever be. I personally find the promise of someone who is the most beautiful and will never leave you to be quite appealing. Not only that, this is someone who cares and takes care of you in every moment of your life. Perhaps many of us have experienced the hand of God holding us in difficult moments, or arranging things in our lives in ways that seem out of the ordinary or inexplicable. For example, when I was in high school, my parents, sister, and I were riding on the highway one cold winter morning. This was in Germany. We got into an accident. The car slipped on ice at a high speed and completely rolled over. Between myself and my sister on the back seat, there was this big, heavy TV set. This was back in the early 2000s. The car was badly damaged, but neither of us nor my parents got hurt, not even a scratch. Although the entire event happened very quickly, and I don't remember much of it, I do have the feeling that there was something, some force that held us, that protected us in those moments. It could also be that I'm just imagining all that. The challenge for me, at least, is in recognizing things like this as being the hand of God. In the case that I just shared with you, it's easy to just see it as luck rather than as a form of divine protection. But for those who have greater faith and are better attuned to sensing the presence of the divine than me, it would not be a question whether this was divine protection or not. It seems that the more intense one's faith and love is, the more clearly God's presence is felt, the more distinctly God manifests himself, and one is able to recognize him or her. We have seen in the Srimad Bhagavatam classes, for instance, the story of Prahlad. We have seen how God, Narayana himself, protected his devotee Prahlad from all the attempts that were made to kill him, and eventually manifested himself as the half-man, half-lion Narasimha, and killed Prahlad's powerful demon father, Hiranyakashipu. But oftentimes, God works in much more ordinary ways that we often fail to recognize, as illustrated in the following story told by Paramahamsa Sri Swami Vishwananda in his book, Just Love. So here's the story. Once in a town, there was a man who had great faith in God. He believed in God and trusted in God with all his heart. One fine day, there was such a heavy downfall that everything started to flood. So the authorities came and told the people, listen, we have to evacuate this place because soon there's going to be a big flood. As there was a dam there, the dam was expected to overflow, and then everything around would be washed away. But this man was so adamant and very clear about his faith, belief, and trust in God. So he said, no, God will save me. As the rain would not stop, the water level started to rise. So many were evacuated. Then, as the water rose to half of the man's house, the authorities sent a boat. When the boat came, he said, no, I'm not going away. I don't need you. So they could not force him. The water kept rising, and finally he was on the roof. So the authorities sent a helicopter. They said, come, we will save you. He said, no, God will save me. My faith will save me. My belief will save me. Alleluia. So, as they could not take him, he eventually drowned. Of course, he died, and he went to heaven. the gate opened up, and a very angry man entered heaven, saying, "I have to have a word with God." So the messengers of God said, "You can talk with him." He said, "Yes, I can. I'm very angry with him." Seeing the situation, they called God. "God, listen, there's an angry person who wants to talk to you." God said, "Okay, send him up to me." When he saw God, he said in a very angry way, "God, why did you not save me? I had so much faith, belief, and trust in you. You should have saved me." And God said, "Hey, wait 1 minute, my dear. I tried my best to save you. First, I sent buses to evacuate you. You said no. Then I sent a boat to go and save you. You said no. You didn't want it. Then I sent a helicopter. How come you said that I didn't try to save you? It's just that you didn't recognize my help any of those times." So with this story, we need to remember that God is in everything and everyone. As Paramahamsa Vishwananda writes, God works in the world through each person, playing different roles, like an actor who wears many different clothes and speaks in many different voices. I think the story also teaches us that having faith does not mean one shouldn't use one's reason or common sense. But the ways in which God cares and takes care can at times be mysterious. They're not always pleasant or in alignment with our desires. Here we may recall the story of Sri Krishna that Swami Yogadmananda sometimes tells, where Krishna requests water from a rich man and upon receiving it, blesses him that his wealth may increase. When he makes the same request of a poor devoted Brahmana who has no water to offer, but instead offers Krishna milk from his beloved cow, Krishna receives it and blesses him that his cow may die. How strange. Narada, who is there with Krishna, asks him, "But why? The poor man was clearly more devoted than the wealthy guy. Why curse him like that?" And Krishna reveals that this man's attachment to his cow was an obstacle on his spiritual path, was a barrier between him and God. So his was indeed a blessing. So God is always there, caring and taking care, but it's not always easy to recognize him, and his ways may be mysterious and not aligned with our wishes. Now, to return to our question, who is this God who is to be loved? So far, the answers we have reflected upon are God is the most beautiful, and God is eternal, always there, caring and taking care of us. Now we will consider another response. God is unconditional love. He needs nothing from us, but responds to love because love is his very nature. And God is bliss. Many saints have said this and experienced it. But this evening, I want to turn to the experience of someone who is a bit more relatable to me than these saints. And I want to share with you the account of a near-death experience that I came across quite by chance on YouTube and that I found quite moving. So I'm going to ask Eze upstairs to play the video on YouTube.
Hi, I'm Andy Petro. I want to tell you about an experience that I had many years ago. It was 1955. It was the 2 days before graduation from high school, and our class decided to take a picnic out in a nearby lake. So we got all packed up and ready to go, and we got there, and it was a beautiful summer day. It was cold. The water was cold because this was in Michigan, and the water doesn't warm up very much there. And so we had lunch and playing some games and things. And then all of a sudden, I could see some of my friends on a floating raft floating platform out about 50, 100 yards away. And they were waving at me to swim out and meet them. I really didn't want to get in the water because the water was too cold. So I did a running dive into the water, and it really was cold. And now I'm swimming out to the platform. And I get about halfway there, and I start getting cramps in the lower part of my abdomen. And now I can't kick. And now I'm starting to splash around, and I'm choking on some water. Water's going down, and now I'm underwater. And now I'm starting to panic because I don't know what to do. I'm stuttering even as I'm thinking about it. And then all of a sudden I pop up again above the water, and my head is above the water, and I'm looking around. What can I see? And I can see the guys on the platform. I can't yell because there's water in my throat and mouth and everything. And so I'm waving, and they're waving back at me. So they must think we're playing some kind of game. And then I go down again, and I never come up. And now it's cold. It is so cold. I'm shivering. Just violently cold. And as I go down deeper and deeper, it starts to get darker. And now all of a sudden I can feel weeds at my feet. There are weeds at the bottom of the lake. And I'm sliding into the weeds, and then all of a sudden I hit bottom. And I hit bottom in a sitting position. Now, oh man, I start to feel better because I think I can push myself out of the sitting position and get to the top of the lake again. And when I push my arms down again, now it's worse than being sitting there because now I'm stuck. And at this moment, everything is screaming in my body. I'm dying. I finally admit that I'm dying. And then all of a sudden there's a voice in my head, and it's a voice that I remember, but I don't know who it is. And the voice says, Andy, you need to stop and rest for a while. And then I'm talking to myself in my head, and I'm saying, are you crazy? I got to get up. I need at least one breath of air. That's all I ask, is one breath of air. And the voice says to me, Andy, you really need to rest. So just relax and let go. And I said, I can't do that. And the voice says again, you need to let go. And so I say to the voice, okay, do you promise that if I let go, I'll be able to get to the top? And the voice says to me, if you let go, everything will be fine. I said, okay, you promise? And the voice says, yes, I promise. So then I said, okay, I'll let go. And the moment that the word go formed in my mind, I popped out of my body, and in what I call a moment of no time, at one point I'm in my body, and at the next point I'm in this tunnel. And I don't remember going to the tunnel. It was just, now I'm in my body, now I'm in the tunnel. And in the tunnel, I'm warm, I'm happy, I can breathe again. I'm just filled with the joy and unconditional love. It was so stark. It was such a change from complete terror to complete ultimate ecstasy in a minute of no time. And I'm just so completely happy. I look down and I can see a body, and I'm saying, it's funny, I could see that because it was dark down there. And I look at, yep, that's my body. I don't care. I didn't care. At the moment that I saw my body at the bottom of the lake, I didn't care about my life. I didn't care about being on earth because I knew I was home. And then I turned in the other direction. And now I'm looking at a spot of light. And the light is not very big, but it is so bright, it should be burning my retinas. And I'm saying, wow, now that's a bright light, but it doesn't hurt. And now I feel myself being drawn like a magnet, like a giant magnet. The magnet's pulling me through the tunnel. And I'm starting to get closer to the light. And then all of a sudden, in a moment of no time, I'm no longer in the tunnel. Now I'm in the middle of a giant sphere about the size of a soccer coliseum, huge. And I'm hovering in the middle of this ball. in the inside of the ball. And around it, all 360 degrees, everywhere I look, are little motion picture screens of all of my lives and of all of the things that I'm doing. And the light is next to me. I don't see it, but I feel it and I know it's there. And the light and I start to communicate about all of these events in all of my lives. And I could see them all, and nothing was confusing. I understood everything. I could understand all the lifetimes. I could understand all the things it is. And when I would focus on any one particular screen, I would relive it. Only now, as I'm reliving it knowing the feelings and the effect that I have on the people that I'm communicating with in that scene. So if I'm with my family and talking to them about something, I know what they're thinking as I'm talking. So that because nothing's hidden, nothing is unknown, everything is transparent. And I go from all my various lives, from being female, from being on other planets, on and on. And it seemed like I was there for months. But obviously in Earth time, I was only drowned for somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes. Otherwise, I would be here saying this. So, and then as I'm looking at these things, finally, in another moment of no time, now I'm not in a sphere, I'm back in the tunnel. And now I'm really close to the light. I'm as close to the light as I am to the screen on my computer. And I'm standing there and the light says, Andy, I love you. And I'm impressed because it knows my name. And then the light says, Andy, we love you. And when the light says, we love you, the whole background and the light kind of disappear. And now there are thousands and millions and trillions of other lights, just like me. And they say in one chorus, welcome home, Andy. And at that point in time, I was absorbed into the light. I became the light. I wasn't greater than the light. I wasn't less than the light. I was a piece, a holographic piece of the light. And it's the most fantastic feeling that as a human, I could ever imagine. It's indescribable. And at that moment, I knew everything. What do you mean, Andy? I mean, I knew everything. There was nothing I did not know. So people often ask me questions. Well, when you were in the light, did you ask them about the war and peace and all? I said, no, I didn't ask them. There was no reason to ask questions because I knew it all. There was nothing that was unknown. And now I'm with the light, and the light is really funny. The light has a fantastic sense of humor, laughter, fun. When we were looking at my life review in the big sphere, the light would say, Andy, look how upset you got over that. You know, in the long run, it doesn't mean anything. Why don't you loosen up? Why don't you lighten up? Why don't you have more fun while you're on the planet? You're only going to be there for a little while because it's not real. Earth life is not real. It's like a play. It's like a movie. There's 8 million actors on the planet, and they're all playing a role. They come with different costumes, different religions, different races, different sex, different, all of these things. But once the costumes are gone and taken off, when the play is over and you're back in the light, the costume comes off, and what do you know? We're all one. We are all the same. We're made out of the same stuff. There is no difference between me and you. There is no difference between you and anybody else.
All right. The description of the loving light that is all-knowing, and it's also playful, a lot of fun, as Andy says, and that pervades everything there is and plays all the roles, is appealing to me. The experience of coming home and feeling safe and loved and held forever. So beautiful. It moved me quite a bit when I heard this account. And of course, it all sounds so Vedantic and in line with what we're taught in our tradition. It's also, I think, a beautiful account of an experience of an unconditional love, which is why I wanted to share it with you. And now we're going to come to the second question, but in some ways, by answering the first question, we've already answered this question. So what is the nature of the love of God? If the nature of God is unconditional love, then the nature of the love of God is unconditional. It's not of the nature of, on the condition that you do this or that for me, then I love you. As Swami Vivekananda put it, and Swami Vivekananda, as you know, doesn't mince words, that would be mere shopkeeping. Swami Vivekananda helpfully describes the nature of love as a triangle. The first angle of this triangle is that love knows no bargaining. And here I'm going to quote from Swami Vivekananda. I decided to quote a lot because these people say everything so much better than I could. So here we go. Wherever there is any seeking for something in return, there can be no real love. As long as there is in us any idea of deriving this or that favor from God in return for our respect or allegiance to Him, so long there can be no true love growing in our hearts. Those who worship God because they wish Him to bestow favors on them are sure not to worship Him if those favors are not forthcoming. The Bhakta loves the Lord because He is lovable. There's no other motive originating or directing this divine emotion in the true devotees. And also, as he says in his unmistakable way, begging is not the language of love, right? If we pray to God for this or that, please God, give me this or that, that's begging. To worship God even for the sake of salvation or any other reward is equally degenerate. Love knows no reward. Love is always for love's sake. The Bhakta loves because he cannot help loving. Well, this seems like a pretty tall order. And yet, it makes sense because asking God for anything in return for love, other than love itself, would mean fooling ourselves. Because there is nothing we could ask in exchange for that love that would be of equal value to that love. Because that love is bliss itself, the fulfillment of all desires. So what more could we want if we want that love? By asking for something other than love, we would in fact be getting quite a bad deal. The second angle of the triangle of love, according to Vivekananda, is that love knows no fear. This one was, to a certain extent, still is a bit difficult for me. Having grown up with a Christian conception of God, in which God is a kind of a grand punisher of sin. In the Eastern Orthodox tradition that I was born in, during Mass, priests called the people to assemble, the people assembled to approach the altar with a feeling of fear of God. And in my own language, Romanian, a commonly used saying is that if someone does something wrong, then God will surely punish them. Or if something bad happens to someone, then one would say, God punished this person. In the Hindu conception, God is certainly not a punisher, but karma is. And there doesn't seem to be any escape from it as such, although as Holy Mother tells us, if we do spiritual practice sincerely, we can diminish the effects of the accumulated karma. I haven't quite resolved this for myself, but to the extent that I understand it, it seems like the key here is purification rather than punishment, right? You don't get punished because you're a sinner, but you may get an unpleasant experience, a reaction, a payback, as it were, so as to purify and transform you. So why does love know no fear? Because fear presupposes separation and distinction. Love means unity. God and myself are one. We share the same divine being. There's no separation here, at least in our tradition. There's no distinction either. The third angle of the love triangle is that love knows no rival. For in it is always embodied the lover's highest ideal. And these are, again, Vivekananda's own words. This is another one that I've struggled and still struggle to grasp. The object of love is one's highest ideal. In the Bible, it is said that one cannot serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. Okay, fine. I mean, you can't love money and God at the same time. That makes sense to me. But that love knows no rival also means that you cannot love your parents, children, spouse, career, and so on, and God at the same time, right? Because that would be a rival to God. When it comes to the practice of the love of God, one aspect of it is this one-pointedness and single-mindedness and intense longing for God and only God, while holding that everything else is unreal, as Swami Yogadmananda teaches us. With that said, I think ultimately we need to qualify a little bit the previous statement, at least in our Vedanta tradition, and that is, you cannot love your parents, children, spouse, career, and so on, and God at the same time, except if you know, if you feel that God is in them. And that should be in a real heartfelt way and not just as an intellectual exercise, right? Because then you would be loving God alone and there would be no rival. In any other way you love them, there would be a rival. And so if that's the case, then there should be no reason that one should not love one's mom or child, but then one should love one's mom and child and spouse and career equally to loving a stranger, right? It would mean that love would have to be equal regardless of relationship and proximity to oneself, if God is equally in everyone. So this bar is really high, right? It seems really high to me. But at its core is the Vedantic principle of oneness. And in relation to this, since we're now moving to the question of practicing the love of God, I would like to read some words from Swami Ashokananda. This is from the last of the 3 lectures included in the booklet, When the Many Become One. In one of the books of our philosophy, it is said, "Do not think that you're separate from anything. Whatever you think you're separate from will circumscribe you and bind you. Think that you are one with all, and you will be free." This is the true sense of oneness. But do not for a moment think that it can be derived by any superficial practice. Real things are not on the surface. This is the horrible mistake that you people make in this country. He was giving the talk in the US. You talk of great things, good things, but you think all these things are floating on the surface, and all you have to do to attain them is to be superficial. No, that is a great mistake. Only the great can achieve the great. Only the deep can achieve the deep. If you say, "It seems to me the cure is more difficult than the illness," I shall ask why you think you have not deep power within you. Why should you have that idea? Why should you be superficial and think that that is your nature? That is where you are committing suicide. You are deep, profound. Try to be deep and profound and see if you cannot find deep and profound truth within yourself. You have to practice those things. If you become superficial, you will become like dust that is being scattered by the wind. You won't be anything better than that. So I say, if you want great things, you should be very thoughtful about those things, and you should go deep where they are. The fact is that when you go deeper and deeper, you are not far off from the oneness of which I have spoken. The many disappears and becomes the one. Do you know what word we use for the perception of the one? We call it a state of samadhi. Samadhi means a state of profound meditation. You talk a lot about meditation nowadays, but do you know what meditation is? Meditation is very profound in its true nature. When you reach that state, there comes a deep sense of oneness within you. You feel one with everybody. Swami Ashokananda was a disciple, well, not direct, but in a sense direct disciple of Swami Vivekananda, as he would say. And you can tell from, how he writes that he doesn't mince words either. The true sense of oneness cannot be derived by any superficial practice. Real things are not on the surface. And so let's turn to the last question, which is, how does one practice the love of God? And the answer to it already somewhat implied in the answers of the previous questions. To put it simply, in the words of Swami Vishwananda, Paramahamsa Vishwananda, you can only learn to love by loving. Well, it seems like we're back to where we started, right? The command to love. And as I said earlier, or when we started, I can't make myself love by an act of will and self-exertion. But in fact, what's going on is that God being love itself, only God can awaken love in us. And even so being the case, as we're being told again and again, we need to do our part. And this is where spiritual practice comes in, which purifies and transforms us. And there are, of course, wide variety of spiritual practices, and that's something that I'm not going to be talking about today because I don't have time, and also because I'm not in a capacity to talk about all those. Ultimately, it's one's teacher who will best prescribe what spiritual practices will be best suited to any one of us. But what I would like to dwell upon in the remaining minutes is on the fact that, well, the nature of spiritual practice, at least in these early stages of struggling, right? It's really a struggle. Like any spiritual aspirants I've talked to or heard talk about their experiences will say that this is not pleasant or easy for the most part, at least not until you get some glimpses of the divine, right? It's mostly struggle. And so I was reminded as I was writing this talk and contemplating the struggle that spiritual practice is, for me at least, I was reminded of the lines from The Prophet by Khalil Gibran, which is one of my favorite poems. And this is from where the prophet is asked to speak of love. And he says, "For even as love crowns you, so shall he crucify you. Even as he is for your growth, so he is for your pruning. Even as he ascends to your height and caresses your tenderest branches that quiver in the sun, so shall he descend to your roots and shake them in their clinging to the earth. Like sheaves of corn, he gathers you unto himself. He threshes you to make you naked. He sifts you to free you from your husks. He grinds you to whiteness. He kneads you until you're pliant. And then he assigns you to his sacred fire, that you may become sacred bread for God's sacred feast. All these shall love do unto you, that you may know the secrets of your heart, and in that knowledge become a fragment of life's heart. To experience the love of God, to love God with one's whole being, the ego has to go. The sense of I and mine has to go. The sense of separateness has to go. The clinging and grasping after the things of the world has to go. That's the pruning. That's the threshing. That's the sifting. That's the grinding, the kneading, the burning. It's the ego that is getting burned up. And as that happens, as a gradual process, the heart opens and the secrets of the heart get revealed. And the prospect of all that, I think, can be quite scary. I personally feel like that sometimes. But then what's the alternative, right? The prophet tells us, but if in your fear you would seek only love's peace and love's pleasure, then it is better for you to cover your nakedness and pass out of love's threshing floor into the seasonless world, where you shall laugh, but not all of your laughter, and weep, but not all of your tears. So the seasonless world where you shall laugh, but not all of your laughter, and weep, but not all of your tears. So the alternative is life as usual, with moments of joy and moments of sorrow that always succeed each other, bland and temporary joys, and oftentimes great, definitely much greater than the joys, suffering, and sorrows. Life as usual. A life that is not experienced at its fullest in all its beauty and joy and expansiveness. So which of these do we want? I guess each one of us has this choice to make. So with this, we're going to end. This is an opportunity for all of us to reflect on the choice that we want to make. And we're going to close with the chant that we usually chant on the Fridays. And you're all invited to sing along. Mukunda Madhava Govinda Bol, Keshava Madhava Hari Hari Bol. Mukunda Madhava Govinda Bol, Keshava Madhava Hari Hari Bol. Hari Hari Bol, Hari Hari Bol, Hari Hari Bol, Hari Hari Bol. Krishna Krishna Bol, Krishna Krishna Bol, Krishna Krishna Bol, Krishna Krishna Bol. Mukunda Madhava Govinda Bol, Keshava Madhava Hari Hari Bol, Keshava Madhava Hari Hari Bol. I mean, if anyone has any questions, I can attempt, although I'm sure any questions will be much better answered by Swami Yogatmananda. Anything upstairs? So you get an early release. The programs are going on as usual. There's morning and evening meditation. And then this Sunday, there's going to be a talk by Rajeshwari Balasubramaniam on Tamil Shaivism. you're all warmly invited to attend.
Oh, I have a question. What was the name of that guy or the name of that video you showed?
And Andy Petro, Andipetro. Yeah, he has some writings as well, poetic writings about his experience. Yeah. All right, we're free to go.
And if you want to register for the retreat, come see me right away because I have to leave soon.